past this with like any time travel movie, any multiverse story. It's not unique to Marvel, but it is difficult to generate any kind of tension, any kind of stakes when you can just essentially turn back time and do stuff again, or pull out
And
another version.
well, I agree, but Marvel is running this into the ground. They have gone to this well way too often, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, sure they have. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. My name is James, joined as ever by my good friend Steve. And this episode, we are talking Deadpool and Wolverine.
Hey, but you know the drill. If you haven't already subscribed to Deep Dive, it'd be a great favor to us. Helps the algorithm, gets the show out to more people, and grows the audience. And I would love that, James. How about you?
Absolutely. Yeah. We need to reach as many eyes and ears as possible. And I do want to say before we get started, we do contain spoilers. So you have been
Yes.
warned. There's no point talking about a movie like this one unless you're going to talk about the spoilers and all the surprises and what have you. So I recommend you watch the movie first, because that, I think, is half the fun. I'm going to come right out, Steve, and say I think that this movie is going to reward whatever you kind of bring to it. I think
Sure.
for the hardcore, Marvel comic book fans, they're going to be pretty pleased. I think there is so much stuff. There are so many cameos. There are so many Easter eggs. There are so many sort of meta jokes. There's so much sort of commentary at the expense of Fox and all about the sort of the reacquisition of sort of the X-Men and the Fantastic Four and all
Yeah.
of those other characters. That I think your hardcore comic book fans are really going to sort of lap all of that up. If you're not one of those people and you're coming to it just because you're a Ryan Reynolds fan or you're a Hugh Jackman fan, or it's just the movie out this weekend, I think your enjoyment is going to vary quite considerably, because just to put it on the table straight away, I think it's got some of the many problems that a number of blockbusters have these days. I think it's
Mhm.
too long. I think it relies a little too heavily on the sort of innate charisma of its leads. And if you strip away all of those gags and all of that to camera stuff and all of the meta stuff and all of the hardcore nerd stuff, and just look at the movie for what it is, it's a pretty sort of bare bones by the numbers kind of superhero movie.
Yeah, James, I just mentioned before we started recording that I came back from Disneyland. My family and I were big Disney goers, got the annual pass, and they've got Star Wars. They bought Star Wars. They've got Marvel. So they got their branding rides there now. And it's interesting. You go on some of these rides, and the whole ride has like a built-in plot into the ride, where the screens, they break the fourth wall and they interact with the audience. And there's a little bit of a hyper awareness and a wink, wink and a nod, nod. And everybody's supposed to have a little fun knowing that this is all just for laughs and it's not real. And that's how this whole movie felt to me. Like it felt like a 10-minute ride movie stretched out over 2 hours. I've never seen a movie that was more self-aware of itself. They had more fun with the audience. The problem is that works for a short ride.
Mm.
When it is stretched out over 2 hours, I found myself looking at my watch a couple times going, I wonder if I could run to the bathroom right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot of that in there. I mean, I read someone had a pretty good comment where they said the entire movie feels like a post-credit sequence.
Yeah.
Where it's kind
Yeah.
of like, hey, yeah, and so much of the stuff, we'll get to like the cameos and all the rest of it in a minute, but so many of them amount to nothing more than, hey, remember this guy from this thing?
Yes. Yeah.
Here he
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And you remember this thing from the comics? Here it
Yeah.
is. I
Yeah.
remember this thing we haven't been able to do in an MCU movie for 25 years because it's been licensed out to Fox. Here it is. And
And
beyond simply holding it up and kind of going, for a lot of the gags, not all of them, there are some really, really good gags and really, really good sort of cameos and reveals.
absolutely.
But for a lot of it, it amounts to nothing more than simple IP recognition,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just acknowledging the breadth and the history of the IP essentially.
This is, if this was a cake, it's 90% frosting and 10% cake. It's sweet, but after a while, it's hyper sweet. Like you said, I mean, yes, I mean, some of the cameos were brilliant. Some of them were really funny. I didn't not enjoy this film. I
Right.
enjoyed many aspects of it, but I can't help but feel that there was opportunity lost, particularly with Marvel suffering in the position that it is. You've got two of your biggest IP guys here. And rather than taking all that frosting, let's have the cameos, let's have the hyper magnetism of these two amazing lead actors. But let's have a damn good story. Do we need to revisit the multiverse and the TVA again? I mean, I
Mm.
just found this is getting really starting to get boring. The first couple times you do it, it works. But after you have a couple series of Loki and you got Doctor Strange and you've got different tie-ins to this multiverse, it to me, it's just you people die and it doesn't matter anymore because there's just another one. It's people are reduced. There's no weight, as the word we like to use often, given to a particular character because it's okay if they die because that was just, you know, Iron Man 157. We can always
Yeah.
get Iron Man on Earth 289.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a problem that the MCU has been facing ever since they introduced the whole multiverse saga, is that there are no stakes anymore because there are alternative versions and alternative timelines and all the rest of it. And it becomes a big part of this movie, you know, not to sort of rehash the plot or anything, but obviously Logan has died in the last Logan movie, and essentially Deadpool is tasked with finding a replacement Wolverine and a replacement
Mm.
logo. And one of the sort of deepest cuts I found in the movie is that montage sequence where he goes looking for a new Wolverine,
Yeah,
essentially.
yeah,
And every incarnation that he comes up against is recognizable as either a favorite design and look from the comic books, or a favorite, a sort of iconic cover from an old comic
yeah.
book. So if you know your Uncanny X-Men and your Wolverine and all of that stuff, every one of those incarnations and iterations is going to mean a hell of a lot to
Yeah.
you. I mean, yes, you have to get past this, but you have to get past this with like any time travel movie, any multiverse story. It's not unique to Marvel, but it is difficult to generate any kind of tension, any kind of stakes when you can just essentially turn back time and do stuff again, or pull out
And
another version.
well, I agree, but Marvel is running this into the ground. They have gone to this well way too often, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, sure they have, and they've done it because they're trying to consolidate so many incarnations of characters. I mean, the big one obviously is Spider-Man. How do we, now that we've got, and a lot of it seems to be because these are the licensed properties that weren't under the MCU banner, and that we
Right.
weren't allowed to use as early in the MCU as we wanted to. In the meantime, a number of different characters and a number of different rebooted franchises have existed and are continuing to exist. How are we going to reconcile these things? Multiverse. It's an existing narrative hook within the comic books. We can just call those different versions of Spider-Man or versions of
Right.
the Fantastic Four or the X-Men, whatever. We can just call those multiverse variants, and it gives us not only the opportunity to just pull them in however we want to, as in this movie, but pull in different incarnations. Like, and you look
Right.
at like Spider-Man No Way Home, and you see how they were like, we can
Right.
have all of the different ones together, and we can just say that they're different multiverse variants, as opposed to just acknowledging, yeah, these are reboots of a franchise.
Well, and this film does answer like age-old fanboy questions. Like, for example, will Jennifer Garner ever put the spandex on again and be Elektra?
Sure, because everybody was crying out for that. But I kind of like the
It worked for it. It actually worked for me though.
I kind of like the idea that they were almost plundering the elements of Marvel that people weren't really asking
Yeah.
for, and I kind of think it had a lot of sort of fun with that. What I did notice
Do you
is
think
that
some of it was budgetary though? Like they made a joke about Chris Evans. They de-skinned him and they said, "Man, you were just killing our budget." And I joked with my son afterwards. I said, "Yeah, they were kind of after they got rid of Chris Evans, they kind of went to the Wesley Snipes, Jennifer Gardner level of budget."
Um, It's an interesting question. I mean, this is certainly the most expensive Deadpool movie there has ever been.
I'm
It's
sure.
certainly operating at a much bigger budget than that franchise. I actually went back and watched the last couple of Deadpool movies last week for the first time since in cinema, and you forget how low budget, particularly the first one is. They
Yeah.
really were given nothing by Fox because they thought, well, this isn't going to work, an R-rated,
Yeah.
super mouthy, super violent superhero movie. This is not what we're doing. So in answer to your question, I think it's less like budget, because what I actually found interesting is that almost entirely the characters that they do pull in
Hmm.
are actually from that same sort of Fox stable.
Yes.
They're not the primary MCU characters, but
Mhm.
first and foremost. And actually, when those characters do appear, they appear in sort of recycled footage from existing
Right.
movies, like when they're at the TVA and they're looking at sort of Cap and Thor and whatever on the screens. For the most part, they're like it's existing stuff. Whereas what you do get, obviously, and we'll go into more details, you get a lot of X-Men characters, you get Fantastic Four characters, you get Blade, Elektra, and then you get characters like sort of Gambit, which
Mhm.
have been running jokes for a long time because he's always wanted to play that character and he's never been
Right.
able to. And so here's his opportunity. And I thought that was interesting because since the reacquisition of Fox and since that they have got all these characters back, this is really the first movie to come out that
Mhm.
has used any of these characters, and so I think it was was it a smart move? What I don't know. I just thought it was interesting that the bulk of the characters brought in were
Mhm.
those characters as opposed to like sort of Tony Stark or whatever.
Do you think it was a conscious effort to kind of remind people that these are part of our stable now, and you may see more of them in the future? Or do you think it was really just nostalgia?
I think it's a bit of both. I think it's all of those things. By all accounts, Ryan Reynolds sort of showed up at Marvel with a laundry list of like, I want to do this. Can we do this? Can we do this? Can we do this? And the way he tells the story, and obviously he's trying to market his movie, but he has no reason to make it up. They were pretty open to him doing pretty much anything. He's not going to be able to kill off Thor, for example, a character that
Right.
still is being very much used in the core of the MCU. But you can see that they've with the characters that they haven't quite worked out what they're going to do with yet.
Yeah.
He's got free reign to do pretty much whatever he wants,
Well,
particularly when when it involves the multiverse and it also involves that void realm, which is a
right.
kind of sort of purgatory holding area for characters that are essentially dead anyway.
Or whatever we want to use it for. But we
Yeah.
do know that Deadpool and Thor do have an upcoming very emotional scene together.
That's a nice little sort of fun gag. And he says, "Oh, that's just in the distant future." So
Yeah.
it's a way of kind of sort of tossing that off. But I think at the end of the day, what you have to acknowledge is that it's still a Deadpool movie,
Yeah. Yeah.
and what that means is it's a lot of Ryan Reynolds making dick and fart jokes,
Yeah.
winking at the camera, going, "Oh, aren't I naughty? This is our rating. We're breaking the mold. We're coloring outside the lines of what you would expect from a movie like this, and it's operating at relatively lower stakes than your typical sort of Marvel team up movie."
I'm shaking like an angry vibrator.
Thank you, Al. We have company. Gracia.
That's Wolverine.
You're damn straight it is. Disney brought him back. They're going to make him do this till he's 90.
That said, you've obviously also got Wolverine in there, and I think that actually their camaraderie works pretty well, and I think it is the kind of strongest element of the movie
Yeah.
is their relationship, and I think it makes sense that they have made the movie about that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but is it going to stand as one of the great Marvel movies of all time? No, it's absolutely not. It's an opportunistic moment
That's what it
to
is.
do something different. And I think that going forward, what you're going to see is either Deadpool is going to remain a character on the fringes of the MCU rather than being fully integrated into kind of Avengers movies, for
Right.
example. Or he's going to have to be kind of watered down because
Mhm.
you can't have that character really exist as he is in a PG-13 environment. And at the same time, you're not going to see the MCU now do more and more and more R-rated movies.
Well, it's
So
interesting because
something has to give.
well, that's the thing is some of the violence in this is obviously over the top as we come to expect from a Deadpool movie, and it's a little bit weird seeing Hugh Jackman's Wolverine involved with it. I mean, Logan notwithstanding, Wolverine's always been a PG-13 character, and suddenly he's thrust into this Deadpool surrounding. But it got me thinking. I think I just mentioned to you that I just finished watching season 4 of The Boys, and I'm just coming off of this superhero gratuitous violence where violence is just hyped up to we're going to 11 on all this. And it becomes extremely, after a while, desensitizing. Like it's no longer spectacular. I actually found some of the fight sequences between Wolverine and Deadpool boring because when you got two characters that can regenerate, how many times can you stick your blades into one another?
Sure.
It goes back to my critique of Zack Snyder's first Superman movie with Henry Cavill. Funny, I should mention Henry Cavill with this nice cameo in this film.
Sure.
But in the first Superman Zack Snyder movie, at the end, General Zod and him are basically just spending 20 minutes throwing each other into buildings. It's like when you have two superhuman characters that basically can't die, like in your words, the stakes are lowered. And it's like, I can go to the bathroom now because nothing's really going to happen here of any weight.
No, I mean it's true. I mean, it's often the problem with this kind of movie where you do have sort of superhuman characters, and it's all the more true here, where you've got characters who essentially their powers are exactly the same.
Yeah.
They can essentially just regenerate. It doesn't matter how bloody they get or how mutilated they get. I mean, I actually quite enjoyed the fight in the car in the woods, just because and then it's suggested that it goes on kind of all night until they kind of wear themselves out, and I think that speaks volumes about the nature of their relationship actually, and I felt that actually served as quite a good sort of relationship building moment between them, because they're like, we're gonna just have to learn to get along, because we do obviously frustrate the hell out of each other to the extent that we want to brutally murder one another, but we can't. And so we're kind of stuck with each other, and so I felt that kind of worked. But by and large, I agree. But then I think again, it's inherently true of all superhero movies. Really, is they're indestructible. They are. It was the whole irony of the Expendables franchise. Is like, but none of these guys are expendable. You can't kill off any of these characters, and the same is true in the superhero genre. And so you're just going to have to stick with it. And I thought that sequence was a way of sort of embracing that and leaning into it while actually trying to make some kind of sort of narrative comment about the characters themselves. Should we get into some of the cameos and things that we did like?
I literally out of my tongue. James, how about if we pivot to the cameos and get your perspective on what were your favorites and what stood out to you? It's funny how we're kind of sinking. There
you go. Like Deadpool and Wolverine themselves. There you go.
By the way, it's 33 degrees outside.
It's scorching.
It is absolutely scorching out there. I mentioned I was at Disneyland, and we cut it short for this recording because it was just, and I came back and I made a really large gin and tonic because this is I just came out from the sun and the furnace refreshment. So I'm sorry, go ahead, your cameo.
So I think the big standout cameo for me was Chris Evans. What I should say is I had sort of tried my best not to hear anything, read anything, see anything, and I succeeded. I did not know any of them, and I'm very pleased. And I will reiterate to people, you will get the most out of this movie by knowing the least possible going in. So do your best to try and just avoid reading any sort of reviews or tweets or spoilers or anything like that. I was very surprised to see that on the Letterboxd page for the movie, the entire cast is there. And they're not even trying to hide them. And luckily I didn't see it until after I'd watched the movie, but I was like, whoa, the movie's not even out yet. And
you're putting all the surprise cameos.
They're all right there, and exactly who they're playing and all the rest of it. So,
and you know what made it wonderful? Gabriel mentioned this to me, my son. We went to IMAX as you did on opening day.
Yeah.
And it was full house by and large, few empty seats, and it was fans. So
For sure.
every reveal just elicited tremendous response from the audience, and that's fun. Like that was, you felt like you were part of this communal experience together. Well, that for me, that was one of the highlights of watching this film.
Yeah, I was also with a very receptive crowd. I was with it was kind of like the press screening, you know, the special screening kind of thing, and so everybody in there knew exactly what they were getting into, and they're pumped. So yeah, so I think primarily the big one for me was Chris Evans, and I thought it's a bait and switch that works really, really well, because Deadpool, at that moment, Deadpool has already been expressing his desire to stand alongside Captain America and to be an Avenger and all the rest of it. And then when they're in the void and they come across Chris Evans, he jumps to the conclusion, oh, it's Captain America. And you know, he's getting all geared up, and then you know, the bait and switch is the reveal that it isn't his Captain America, it's Chris Evans's Johnny Storm from the Fantastic Four. And I thought that landed perfectly, and that was a really, really fun reveal, and worked really well. You know, it's already a surprise to see someone like Chris Evans in the movie, but then to see him be like, oh no, he's not playing the guy you think he is, he's playing that. Remember when he played that other character first? It just works sort of doubly for me.
Our whole audience went into laughter. Like it was
For sure.
brilliant bait and switch, as you mentioned, and everybody fell for it. I did. In my mind, it's Captain America, and as soon as he said "flame on," it was even I laughed. It was pretty good.
Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, and I think it quickly establishes the fact that, I mean, I think you already know going into a movie like this, which is probably why you don't get sort of the big characters like Spider-Man or Thor or whatever, is that you know somewhere deep inside you that when these characters are introduced, they're not going to last very long.
Right. Yeah.
You know, something is bad is going to happen to them, and that's kind of part of the fun. Certainly that's something that Deadpool has sort of established already, like in the last movie where he builds his own team and they all just die straight away and that kind of stuff. So here he's just got bigger characters to play with. I mean, another big surprise for me was Wesley Snipes as Blade, you know, which was great, you know. Because obviously I love that first Blade movie that he did back in 98 or whatever. You forget Ryan Reynolds is in Blade 3, Blade Trinity.
I didn't. Yeah,
where
I didn't realize.
he has like two teammates. He has what's her name, Jessica Biel and Ryan Reynolds. So you know, there is that kind of added connection as well. And I like the jokes where they're talking about the different incarnations of the characters, and Snipes is saying there's only ever been one Blade, because obviously there is another one coming
in the works. Yeah,
and they've been,
I think they even say in this, nobody could play Blade but you, and there was kind of
for sure, you know, acknowledging the fact not only that there is another one coming, but that actually they've been having a bit of trouble with it over the last couple of years, you know. And so I think for me, those were the two big ones. I mean, the Channing Tatum one, I got the joke. You know, it's something I know that it's something that he's been wanting to do for a long time. But then when he was there, you know, he didn't necessarily do anything particularly interesting or anything like that. So for me, the big appearances, Chris Evans and Wesley Snipes for me.
I'm always a big Jennifer Garner fan. So when I saw her come out, I went, oh, it's Jennifer Garner. I always got a soft spot in my heart for her.
For sure. Well, that's understandable.
From her Alias days, Sydney Bristow.
Absolutely. And I think there are some other ones that are going to be sort of, you'll have to kind of look them up afterwards, like in that army of other Deadpools at the end. I think there's a whole bunch. I think Matthew McConaughey is the cowboy one.
You know, Gabriel told me that. I had no idea. And I think Ryan Reynolds' son plays Kid Pool or something.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. And there's a guy all in Welsh garb, and I believe that's one of the players from Wrexham as well. I think little things like that. I know Rob McEnany is in there as a TVA officer, but I don't think he.
Gabriel said to me afterwards, he goes, "Pops, we got to go and find a YouTube video for all the Easter eggs we missed, because we caught a lot of them, but I'm sure we missed a lot of them."
Oh yeah, by the end of the weekend, you know, YouTube will be flooded with sort of 300 Easter eggs you missed from Deadpool and Wolverine, and I don't think we're going to attempt to do that, but. There were definitely enough in there for me to be
my favorite Wolverine incarnation was the little stubby one that jumps off the bar stool, and he's like 5'4",
which apparently is how tall he's supposed to be in the comic books as well. That's always been a sort of a sticking point, I think, for fans, is that he's supposed to be a little guy. So And yeah, we could go on and on and on and on and on about all of this, and I think that that's what well, that's clearly what has fed the creative process of making this movie. It's just like,
Yeah.
what else can we stuff in here? What can we get away with? And how much can we ape at? And and that works to a point, but you've got Deadpool is always going to be, lewd, crude, childish humor, breaking the fourth wall. It's that weird juxtaposition between sort of toilet humor and sort of these wall breaking asides about the state of the industry, and and these mergers between big companies, and you're kind of like, it kind of shouldn't work, but it kind of does. I mean, they're all very valid gags in and of themselves. One of the dirty jokes I actually really enjoyed is when he gets fitted for his new suit by the Marvel tailor.
Yes, yeah.
And it's just, and the increasing number of kind of crotch grabs and butt slaps, whilst putting on his. I just thought that was kind of funny. And then he's just like, "You want to watch your tailor? I think he's a predator." I was just like, "Yeah, that's funny."
Well, it's little things he made, little like dirty jokes. He said when he mentioned how many bones, like he says, like there's 248 bones in the human body, 259 if I'm watching Gossip Girl. I mean, his wife is Blake Lively, who's in Gossip Girl.
Yeah.
Suddenly, you connect the dots. It took me a moment to get that, but then it was like, actually, that's a pretty funny joke.
Yeah, and this is the thing, is that I think it's kind of the strength and the weakness of the film simultaneously, is that, taken individually, the jokes are decent jokes.
They're funny. There are some really seriously funny jokes. I mean, the whole thing with Hugh Jackman's like six pack. And both men and women are just bedazzled by, we looked him up. He's like 52, 55. Is he 55,
yeah,
53?
I think it's 55. Yeah.
55 years old. And it's like, damn, I want to know what that guy's exercise routine was. And Gabriel was like, it's steroids. Like, like 55, you get that, it's steroids. But steroids or not, that had to have been a lot of work to get there.
Yeah, I was going to say, even if he is on some kind of dodgy supplements, which he probably is, he's not he's not in the Olympics. He doesn't have to.
No, he can. Yeah,
he can dope. And he's got to do it quickly. But you have to do the work. The steroids
absolutely.
are only going to help.
You can't just take a pill and you get that. You've got to do your end too.
For sure. And I think that was one of the great moments when he pulls the hood over and has the classic Wolverine mask. Those moments as the kind of geekier moments in it worked for me. And I was like, okay, great. I think it was just, and I think they'll be the first to admit it. The film's great strength and weakness is the same thing. It's just an overabundance. It's just an excessiveness. I mean, as I was saying, the gags work individually. There's just too many, and it's just exhausting, and it's just too long. And by the end, you're just kind of laughed out, I think.
But it is a fanboy love letter. Like even putting the mask on, my son just whispered in my ear, "That's what gave me chills." Like when he put on the mask, and it's great watching it with him and getting just kind of the banter and then the whole audience. It was wonderful. James, we draw this to a close. What unit of measure are we going to use to grade our review of this movie?
Wolverine claws, maybe something like that.
Let's go with Wolverine claws. How many Wolverine claws are you going to give Deadpool and Wolverine?
Okay, for me, I suppose it's. I mean, I think it's. It was consistently funny. It was. I appreciated how deep they went into the lore and how they plundered it, and some of the cameos and what have you worked really, really well. As I've said, in the end, it was an overabundance. It was excessive, and I was kind of worn out just by the sheer volume of it. And I think it's way too long, and there were some real sort of lulls in the middle that could have been sort of tightened up by dropping sort of 20 minutes or whatever. But it was a fun time. I'm curious how a casual Friday night audience is going to respond to it. I have no doubt it's going to do what it set out to do. It's going to save the MCU. It's going to make a bucket of money. It's going to make an absolute ton of money. I think it is, something that people are just going to find entertaining. But that said, I think it lacks a bit of substance, a bit of meat on its adamantium claws, and I'm going to give it 3.
I think I'm with you. We never bothered to even mention the villains in this film.
I think that says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah. And the paper thin plot. While I was watching this, I was vacillating between laughing my butt off and being bored. And so there was a measure where I wanted to go 2.5 with this, but I'm thinking, no, they really did, as you said, they really plundered the lore for all the best reasons and in all the best ways. This really is I think it's been said by others, a love letter to Marvel fans. Those of you that have been following these characters for years are going to get a return on your investment by watching this film. So I'm going to recommend it. I got to give it 3 as well. I think it was a fun film, hardly perfect. You talk about it being long, but I think it really clocked in at just about 2 hours or just over 2 hours,
Just over, I think.
which is substantially less than the standard Marvel movie, which shows you how paper thin this plot was. To stretch this, what I essentially said was a Disneyland Marvel ride plot over 2 hours. It got pretty thin. So yeah, I'm just going to give it 3, and we're going to leave it at that. But that's what James and I think about it. Obviously, we both gave it 3. Worthy recommendation, but hardly I don't know, going all out for this one. Maybe you have a different opinion, or what is an Easter egg we missed? Is there an Easter egg or a cameo that stood out to you? We'd love to hear your thoughts on Deadpool and Wolverine. James?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if people flat out loved it for anything that we haven't mentioned, please let us know. I've seen already that reviews are really sort of running the gamut. People are just like reveling in it, and people are also sort of saying what a complete waste of time that was. I fall squarely in the middle, and so yeah, we just want to hear from people who saw it and then what you got out of it. So do let us know.
Till next episode, cheers.
Bye.
You ought to be in pictures, oh, what a hit you would be.